Okay, so now we'll turn to this case of dialect prejudice in the courtroom. So both of these things are quite serious, right? People being denied housing based on the variety they speak, and here, someone, the outcome of a trial being determined by the variety that one of the witnesses speaks. There's this wonderful short video in which John Rickford discusses the general issues around dialect and justice in the court system. He's one of the authors of the study. And we'll listen to that first before moving on to the discussion of the study.
Justice should be blind. I mean, it shouldn't be affected by people's race or their gender and so on and so forth. But it certainly shouldn't be deaf. The reason you ask people questions in court is you're trying to figure out exactly what happened when, who saw what, and so on. And you don't get to choose your witnesses. You don't say, we will only have trials for people who speak American Standard English or mainstream English. In fact, very often they're speakers of various kinds of vernacular or non-standard varieties. And by the way, it's not just about African American speakers. I've had court reporters say they've had speakers who speak Scottish English or who speak Sierra Leone Creole, West African Pidgin English, and they said, we couldn't understand a word. We took a deposition, but we couldn't understand a word. But if you can't understand a word, you really can't have a trial. At least you can't have a fair trial. You may be locking up somebody who's innocent. You may be letting somebody who is guilty get off. So it becomes very important. In America, in general, we provide interpreters for speakers of different languages. So if you speak Swahili, or if you speak Japanese, or even Spanish, we'll have an interpreter for you. But if you speak what people consider a dialect of English, then there's no interpreters. Generally, some judges can use some discretion. So in the basic interest of fairness and criminal justice, I think we need to do much more to make sure that we fully understand what African American and other dialect speakers are saying when they appear in court.
This presentation that I'm making here is largely drawn from John Rickford and Cherise King's excellent recent article in Language, which is available at this link. And I've copied the beginning of it. I'll just read a little bit of it because I think their words are the best for this. Rochelle Jeantel was the leading prosecution witness when George Zimmerman was tried for killing Trayvon Martin, but she spoke in African American vernacular English, and her crucial testimony was dismissed as incomprehensible and not credible. The disregard for her speech in court and the media is familiar to vernacular speakers and puts linguistics itself on trial, and we'll get to this at the end. Following Saussure, how do we dispel such prejudices and fictions? Saussure spoke about the arbitrariness of language. So there's no, and we've talked about this a lot in this course, the structures of language are arbitrary. They have no, there's no way in which one variety of English is more logical or more precisely structured than another. So how do we, if these are arbitrary features of language, how do we dispel such prejudices and fictions? And going back to the author's words again, we show that Jeantel speaks a highly systematic African-American vernacular English with possible Caribbean influence. We also discussed voice quality and other factors that bedeviled her testimony, including dialect unfamiliarity and institutionalized racism. Finally, we suggest strategies for linguists to help vernacular speakers be better heard in courtrooms and beyond. Here are Rochelle Jeantel, Trayvon Martin, and George Zimmerman. And here are the facts. Trayvon Martin was killed on February 26, 2012, when he was 17 years old, and his best friend, Rochelle Jeantel, was 18. She was on the phone with him during the incident and was a key witness at the trial. George Zimmerman was acquitted on July 13, 2013. These events helped spark the Black Lives Matter movement. As the authors note on page 955, Jeantel's testimony was crucial in that she claimed that Zimmerman was pursuing Martin rather than the other way around, as Zimmerman had claimed. Jeantel was widely mocked in the press and in social media. I won't read these to you. I'll let you take a look at them yourself, but they are pretty horrifying. The paper goes on to point out that her speech is neither inarticulate nor incoherent, but a systematic exemplification of the grammar of African American vernacular English. And to do so, they look at how her speech from courtroom transcripts exemplifies both the syntax and the phonology of African American vernacular English. We'll look at some of the phonology, which connects right up with the things we're talking about in this course. Here is a graph showing the overall rate of deletion of t and da from a final cluster, that is, from a word like bend. The rate of deletion from this position overall that Rochelle Jeantel shows is similar to other African American vernacular speakers that have been studied in the sociolinguistics literature. And we had the nice opportunity to hear one of the Jets speaking in the Lebov talk from 2 units back. TD deletion, or tada deletion, I should point out right away, is a feature of all varieties of American English and probably most other varieties as well that have been studied. That is, in some contexts, in almost every variety of English, the final ta or da will be deleted from a word like bend or exact. But the chance of deletion is affected both by the particular variety that you're speaking and by factors, by phonological and morphological factors. And this chart compares Rochelle Jeantel's rates of deletion in different linguistic contexts to those that are seen in the corpora from different studies of African American vernacular English and related varieties. And what you can see is that it looks, the shape looks roughly similar, and we're getting the same kind of patterns. And this is the thing that they emphasize in the article, is that that her deletion of ta and da is not just some sort of random speech error or laziness or anything like that, but it's a systematic linguistic pattern. So in monomorphemic words, words like exact, when that word comes before a consonant, we get more deletion than when it comes before a vowel. So exact price is very often produced without the ta in my variety and in African American vernacular English, but exact application would have the ta much more often. There's also a distinction between monomorphemic and past tense occurrences. So if you have a da, a final da or a final ta, can be the past tense morpheme. And when it's the past tense morpheme, it's deleted somewhat less frequently generally than when it's monomorphemic. So all of that is, again, it's to say that this is a systematic pattern, a linguistic pattern, and it exemplifies the systematicity of Rochelle Jeantel's speech. So more important than the reaction in the press and social media was the reaction of the jurors. As the authors discuss, she was frequently misunderstood and seen as not credible. And you can hear a juror questioning Rochelle about what she's saying. So because apparently the juror is not understanding and not being patient with her, and the court, the judge is telling her telling the juror not to ask questions. So George Zimmerman was dismissed, and there are many instances of justice not being served because of linguistic discrimination. There are a couple other examples in this section, some further materials. One where a defendant used the term lawyer dog, and that was taken to mean something other than the person meant, and with bad consequences. And this is a good. The link here takes you to a good discussion of the role of prosody in the tragic Sandra Bland case. This is all depressing and awful, and so we might be wondering what we can do. There's an excellent discussion of this in the article, which I'll have you take a look at yourselves as part of an exercise.